Kirby's Epigan might be the most dense spin-off in the series, with its multiple worlds, collectibles and secrets offering a complete package some mainline titles cannot follow. Back in the day, this charming adventure was dismissed because of its not existing difficulty and not being able to completely die. It's more like a Sonic game where each hit robs you some gems necessary for 100%. Of course, there are also a couple unique bosses functioning a little different due to Kirby's changed abilities. I'm going to judge them just as usual, but will determine their difficulty by the challenge of keeping your gems and obtaining a gold medal. The first boss of the game and introduction of how Epigan wants to design them, because this is a rather different kind of Kirby game. Bosses play out a little differently and, unlike in most Kirby titles, rely mostly on the 3-hit pattern you see in many traditional platformers. Another difference is the way you deal damage. It's not a consistent struggle where you can strike whenever you like as long as you keep your copy ability. Also, Kirby cannot jump on the enemy's head, so they require you to stay patient and wait for an opportunity. This alone makes Epigan very unique as a game in the franchise. So how does Fangora execute this idea in practice? Very safe due to the extremely beginner-friendly nature of the game. His appearance might be more on the intimidating side, and I really appreciate the fact we're not confronting Wispy this time. It becomes very tiring to write about Wispy a million times, but the fight itself is very uncomplicated. The only way for this monster to attack are small fireballs and his pointy tongue, which leaves a chance to flick it. Besides, the short battle cries and wind blows to keep you away are not necessarily attacks or add difficulty to the fight, but are nice details I always enjoy in boss battles. They give the boss a certain presence, and not every design choice in a boss has to serve some serious purpose. It reminds me of the chit-chats in A Hat in Time, which technically are not needed for a good boss, but make the difference between a good and a brilliant one. Fangora is obviously not on the same level, but I do want to emphasize the importance of such small details that can make the difference. Another visual element is the way some bosses will start to look worn out the more damage you inflict. As I always say, I enjoy it way more if boss health is portrayed by visual factors. And despite the fact it's obvious how often you have to hit your opponent, it's still an appreciated detail. Going by the regular order of the game, this Count Dynablade is the ruler of the volcano and guards a piece of the magical yarn with his flaming wings. Just like with Fangora, the basic strategy requires you to grab one of the bird's projectiles, throw them back and flick the boss through the arena. It's a trend that continues with some bosses in the game, but I extremely enjoy how mighty Kirby wrestles those enemies through the air instead of giving them a light bump on the head or simply lashing them. It adds impact to each hit and making collect the gems much more satisfying. Also, the bird's design, just like many other foes, looks so detailed yet simplistic, and you have to be always aware that Epigan was created by a different team, hence showing a great sense of expertise when it comes to designing new Kirby foes, but with a unique touch. The fight itself is very much appropriate for a second boss and feels clearly challenging, with the lava attack that requires you to stand on a platform being the highlight. There is no way to recollect most of your gems once you lose them, so each hit counts and can make this boss more challenging than you think. It was mandatory to happen, and just like with a certain king following, Meta Knight was possessed by Yin Yan's magic power and therefore tries to stop you in the last regular world of the game. Going through my past experience with Meta Knight battles, you are probably aware how much I dislike the similarity between them. Since his debut in Kirby's Adventure, not much has changed when it comes to those duels, which is a shame regarding how creative the creators tend to be in Wispy's or DDD's case. It's still not as outgoing as I would like to see, but Epigan's Meta Knight at least focuses on an aspect that is never really touched on: the blades. Kirby's not harming Meta Knight directly in this confrontation and instead disarms the Lonely Knight in order to bring him back. Because of this, all those blades perform different attacks, with a small increase of challenge. What makes it even more harder is the agility Meta Knight performs. He was always on the quicker side and hard to hit, but without copy abilities and only a few chances to strike back, you have to be permanently on your toes to win. On top of that, I greatly appreciate how Meta Knight mainly flies throughout the fight instead of jumping as he usually does. There's not one big feature setting this rendition from other Meta Knight battles apart, but many small adjustments that can make, once again, a big difference. Meta Knight was not the only victim of Yin Yan's great campaign to conquer Dreamland and set the self-proclaimed king also into the Yarn world. Fitting to his physical similarity to an Arctic bird, DDD is the boss of the ice world and controlled by a strange construct, maneuvering his movement. I like how he casually walks into Kirby suggesting he was lost the whole time and just exploring this unknown world. This peaceful manner should change, however, and once each string is attached to his coat, it's time to duel. Just like with Meta Knight, there are theoretically 1,000 ways to design a DDD brawl, no matter how often he appeared as a foe in the franchise. It's all about creativity, and I'm glad Epigan does not rely too much on the past and puts its own twist to this lifelong rivalry. I already mentioned it with Fangora, but having 4 visible strings displayed is a fitting way to present how much total energy your opponent requires to be diminished. Also, they increased the mandatory hits to win to 4, which is not extraordinary crazy, but nonetheless a light increase in durability on the enemy's side. As much as all of this is new, DDD obviously performs some well-established skills like swinging his iconic hammer and leaving starbits to throw back. Once you land a strike, the only thing left is to stomp his back and destroy each string. Something about this flow of fighting has a special charm to it, not harming your foe directly and instead only targeting the construct that holds him back. It's fundamentally the same, just like with Meta Knight, and normally Kirby simply beats them until they are free. Unlike with Meta Knight, however, I feel like there is one interesting signature move missing, but I'm still more than pleased about how they handle those classic adversaries. It does not happen often, but Epigan features an underwater boss thanks to the pleasing underwater controls. In case you haven't noticed, in this game Kirby automatically transforms to whatever fits the situation, be it a car when sprinting or turning into an umbrella when falling. This goes for underwater sequences as well, and due to your flexibility to move around as fast as you like, Kappamari is a natural fit for this game. Appropriate to his name, the first phase plays out quite uniquely, with the monster hiding his weak point under a thick, multi-layered coat of yarn. You have to consistently win the loose part of this head until it's exposed and shifts his strategy. What I enjoy about this setup is the unlike way of progressing in the fight. Normally you have to wait until it's your moment to turn the tables, but in this case, you can inflict damage whenever you like. The only thing Kirby has to be aware of are the tentacles, which force you to move around while winding. I have not mentioned it yet, but the 2-player mode shines brilliantly in such a scenario, with one player focusing on beating the boss and the other trying to defend. Playing alone increases the challenge, while the other option emphasizes teamwork, the perfect combination and mindfulness of keeping both playstyles in mind without restrictions. Once Kappamari loses his cool, it's time for something not every boss goes for in in this game, a second face. He tries to hide in the dark while sneaking up to you, but luckily it's pretty obvious where your foe remains, and the only thing left to do is landing some powerful hits. Ultimately, it's a great escalation of what you expect from the fourth boss, and I really have to comment how subtly yet noticeable the creators managed to let those opponents rise up and challenge complexity and overall impression. For a Kirby game, it's not very uncommon to place the final boss so high on the ranking, even in spin-offs like Epigan. Yin Yan is the magician behind this whole Yan chaos and turned Dreamland into his place of dreams. I praised it already during my Kirby 64 ranking, but I enjoy how needless the transition between level selecting and the fight is. There are no cutscenes, dialogues or whatsoever, and it feels like both parties want to settle this conflict once and for all. Also similar to 64 is the soundtrack, which sounds noticeably comparable to 64's regular boss theme and creating a pleasant, fast-paced contrast to the calming melodies you heard throughout the game. Still, the fight starts with a feature I always like to see: recycled bosses. There's something intimidating about Yin Yan being able to recreate those former opponents with ease, but far less powerful. It's only Fangora and Kappamari, with both of them renouncing time-consuming skills and having only one health point. Normally, Kirby bosses are reused before the final in a level, for instance, but having them directly during the final boss is a fresh breeze and should not diminish Yin Yan's actual skills. Occasionally he drops dark curtains with only one exit, and you have to jump to escape his barrage of attacks. It's a very interesting attack for a 2D platformer boss, emphasizing the platforming aspect and incorporating the whole arena to the mix. The only moment to seriously strike back is when Yin Yan creates some regular enemies for you to grab, giving you an option to smash your foe through the air, despite the fact the final boss is not really present most of the time and only glides at the top occasionally. It feels like you consistently hide yourself from all sorts of dirty tricks, and surprisingly enough, it doesn't take too many hits for you to seemingly win. We are still talking about a Kirby game, and there has to be at least one additional phase to round things up. Yin Yan turns into some sort of robot, and with Meta Knight's help, Kirby obtains a mighty transformation himself. This second half is not really about bringing an interesting new perspective to the final, as you're going to simply shoot with all your stamina until you win. It's similar to most modern Kirby finals with one climactic finisher, using the gimmick and because the first phase already convinced with its multi-layered situations. This final brawl is the perfect cherry on top of a charming spin-off. Coming into the fight, it's already clear enough something will be different as the eyes of many Waddle Dees watch you. This sentiment should be proven right, and Squashini makes himself ready to deliver the best boss fight in the game. The premise of a magician understandably leaves so much potential for a creative magical round, and the roulette in the middle of the arena is the main cause of a couple dangerous tricks. Each combination stands for a different technique, and they are more than enough to give the fight the variety you know from other Kirby games. The concept by himself might not be innovative per se, and was used many times in other games, but feels fresh for Kirby. The only downside I can see is the downtime between each round, particularly if you replay the game and know what to expect. The fight can be a little slow, but first impressions are everything, and the idea makes it worth. My highlight is the surprising rope attack where the curtains fall and the boss ties Kirby to a giant bomb. Escaping might not be too hard and there's plenty time to get free, but you can use the additional time to farm some gems. Something about this attack is so surprising, it really left an impression on me, and this is the kind of one special technique I was missing for other bosses. Squashini himself carries on the fantastic simplistic design, offers a great soundtrack, and overall secured the first place by presenting a truly creative show. Even though I still prefer the rapid bosses of modern Kirby titles, I'm glad Epigan did not try to copy them, but still matching the quality you would expect from a Kirby boss. There's not a single opponent I consider to be boring, and one of the most apparent strengths is how subtly they increase the difficulty and complexity. On top of that, all of them present a unique boss theme, and I wish the mainline titles would follow this idea. However, what are your thoughts on Epigan's bosses, and did the missing difficulty hurt your enjoyment? There might be the port on the 3DS, but maybe we get the chance to fight those or even new enemies in the Yan world again.